All right, what's going on, everyone? Happy Monday. Hope everyone's having a great start to their week. Today is going to be a fun conversation. It's been interesting. I feel like over the last 2 to 3, maybe like month, maybe like 2 months, let's say. There's a lot of talk about people trying to talk through like how to build up a personal brand and why you should care about a personal brand, all these other stuff, right? And I feel like now it's kind of interesting. I'm starting to see some of the people that were like thought leaders starting to now share, like I'm sick of hearing about personal brand. And so I came across, I'm going to bring in Andy here in a second. I came across Andy just on LinkedIn, looked at some of the content he was putting out and thought it'd be an interesting conversation. So make sure to start dropping again, we're going to be talking a lot about LinkedIn today. But more than anything, we're going to talk about reputation. And I think that that's an important delineation for a lot of you, is that we're going to talk about what's the ROI? And I think that that's it, right? When you hear, even me, I hear the word personal brand. I'm like, okay, come on, dude. Like, what does a person actually need a brand for? So we're going to get into that and all the other goodness. Again, great to see everyone. Dino, what's up, man? I see you. Matt Urban, what's going on, man? Hope you're doing fantastic. And then we've got Ken Gold. What's up, Ken? So let me bring in Mr. Andy right now. There we go. Hey, what's going on, Andy? How are you, man?
Very well, Jake. How are you?
All right. I cannot hear you, but that doesn't mean that it's your fault. Let me look here, double check. Audio. There we go. Okay. What about now?
Hello, Jake. How are you?
Perfect. Here's the key. The key, it's called Bluetooth, Andy. You can't have the Bluetooth speaker on and then you've got your headphones in,
Yeah.
I have to try to, I got too many. Bluetooth was just like technology that just is never going to get better. I think we just have to accept it. Like, it just is what it is,
Well, it works pretty well with my Bose headphones. I mean, that sucker never loses connection, but back in the day. So they must have upgraded the Bluetooth at some stage.
They have, I think so, right? Or whatever the technologies AirPods use. That's like the next evolution of what it is. So Andy, for those who don't know, I was just I put out a little bit, like the post to kind of promote this was around, I think people are getting sick of the term personal brand. They're getting sick of, all the LinkedIn expertise. And look, I'm somebody who talks about this 24/7. You talk about it 24/7. And I think maybe for those of you who don't know Andy, do you want to talk a little bit about the work that you do, Andy, and like the types of clients that you have? And then I think what would also be interesting is you've been doing this for a while, talking about LinkedIn, the importance of being active. Maybe just talk about how that's evolved. How have you seen kind of LinkedIn strategy and brand evolve? And I'd love to get your take, and then I think we can just kind of jump into it.
Yeah. Well, I hesitate to say this, but I am a LinkedIn branding guy. So
hey,
it's been nice.
I am too, man.
It's been nice talking to you, Jake. Yeah. So, I mean, you could use a different descriptor, couldn't you? You could just say, I'm a LinkedIn stories guy, or a LinkedIn profile guy. You don't have to be hung up so much on the word brand.
Yeah.
But that's what I do. So I help my clients with LinkedIn branding and also LinkedIn strategy in terms of whatever objectives they're trying to achieve. I help them with that. So usually it's the profile page and how well or weak they look, and whether or not they're using LinkedIn to navigate properly, and whether or not they're using, the content apparatus to fully leverage the platform. So I help them with that. How have things changed? Well, LinkedIn doesn't stop changing. You've noticed this too. Every day, every week brings numerous changes, some minor, let's say a lot minor, and occasionally we'll get the big ones, like the dwell time tweak to the algorithm.
Right.
So that's changing. How are people using it differently? Well, I think you've seen this too, but there's now more of a support floor under the sort of the smaller audience author. right? So typically there's always been a complaint from newbie authors in particular on LinkedIn.
Right.
Man, I keep pushing out my best stuff and I'm not getting any traction. WTF? Why should I bother?
Right.
LinkedIn's antenna is out. They've heard this many times, and that also was a big tweak, right? About a year and a half ago, they decided,
Massive.
all right, well, yeah, we're going to do, we're going to give less oxygen, all right, less air time to the 2%, and we're going to try and support the little guy. And that's very much in keeping with LinkedIn's ethos, right? Those feel good, hyperbolic, hyper popular content stories on LinkedIn, all about the little guy coming good, right? Usually career wise. So that's continuing to happening, and that's great, right? It's because I still regard myself as a little guy. I'm working very hard to push out my best stuff, and if my best stuff doesn't resonate, it's like, what? Why not? This is amazing stuff. So don't tell me that I can't write. Don't tell me that I can't engage. You're the problem, LinkedIn. The algorithm is relatively dumb if you can't recognize my fantastic content.
The amazingness of
all right. So it's self-belief, and it's, keep at it, keep doing it, keep calm, to use that cliche, and keep pushing out your great stuff.
I love that. I mean, I think that is universal. The universality of, I know that people think I literally was just talking to a kid right before this about that. I see my content's just as good as these other people's. And it's like, one of the behaviors, and we can kind of jump in, that I've always thought about getting active on LinkedIn is that you have to not care one way or the other. Meaning, like for me, I always looked at it as data points, right? Something did well, data point. Something doesn't do well, data point. And then, not getting too high on your own supply when something does really well, not getting too down if something doesn't do well, and just kind of like learning from it. But I feel like a lot of people, that's kind of like the main thing that holds them back from posting, right? Is fear, right? Fear of not being liked, fear of judgment from peers. And so when you're, and I want to go to the profile piece after this, but when you're working with your clients, how do you talk to them or help them to see more value in posting? Because I feel like a lot of people want to do it, but there's a limiting belief, or there's something else that's like holding them back. So when you work with clients, what have you found successful to get people comfortable moving forward?
All right. Well, I think it's universal that everyone has a story to tell. And in fact, if you dug a little deeper, you'd find multiple, many stories that are certainly worth telling and certainly worth sharing. And, maybe those stories have some kind of inherent value. Maybe they're just interesting, period. But if they're informational or educational or entertaining, everyone's got stories. They're the same stories that we tell our friends and our colleagues after work. And that's where I think you have to, flick that light bulb on in the client's head and say, okay, so what are your stories? And then, if they're not completely confident about putting that down on paper, then I will help them, as their editor. And I will finagle that content for them, because that's what I do. That's what I love to do. And so, that's the thing about LinkedIn, isn't it? It forces everyone to become a marketer, a web admin, a self-promoter, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, and then on top of that, you got to understand how this thing works. So it's a big ask, particularly if people are freaking busy, if they're doing other stuff. This is not my day job. And of course, now, COVID, of course, everyone is trying to get on the platform and trying to figure it out, because frankly, they have no choice. And it's deeply competitive. So yeah, that's how I try to encourage my clients. Tell me about your stories, and also, everything is public on LinkedIn. You can see for yourself not only the content, the nature, the type, the kind of content, but also how well it's doing. Right. And you can see, oh, wow, ton of comments on that, good number of reactions. Well, that reminds me of a time when, and that's how that should get your creative juices flowing. Everyone else is doing it. Yes, it has to be married with self-belief. Yes, there has to be consistency. And then there also has to be stamina. I talk about being an overnight success that took 10 years. I've been doing this for a decade. Right. It may look like like I've had it easy, or that I'm doing fairly well. But no, my story is a lengthy one. And I'm kind of glad that the stuff on my blog, the early stuff, Jake, is buried because it was crap.
It's so funny, right? It's like somebody's asking me, I can't remember who I was talking to. It's like, no. I built a company first and then I started to post. Like I didn't start posting actively until I was 38, 37, So I think that's it too, that someone told me this. I was talking about some part of my business and they're like, there's no better time to stop or start doing something than right now. And so, there's somebody who just made this comment, Alyssa Goldschmidt. Alicia, I appreciate you dropping that in there. It's a really great question. She said, my challenge is finding a topic that hasn't already been written about well by people that have a much larger following. So I think this is a lot of people, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to Alyssa. And so thank you for dropping that question in there. Where, because the saturation, because of COVID, right? There's a lot more content being produced, no doubt, right? A lot more content. And so when you have an executive, and I'm sure you hear this, right? When you talk to them about telling stories, they're like, yeah, but so-and-so's telling that story, or so-and-so. How do you help people to delineate the why behind it? Like why, whether it's why they should get involved, why it's okay that it's like in the same vein. When someone has a question like Alyssa has here, what do you typically tell them?
Yeah, well, look harder, because it's not all the same. I mean, they may be similarly themed, or similarly built around the same, the same topic. But there's always I think there's always an opportunity for you to be idiosyncratic, and to be a little weird, and to embrace that, because that's your character and that's your personality. I mean, one of the reasons my early stuff was so crap was because I was trying, too hard to use my words. Right, I was all about the vocab, and what I should have realized, and what I realized, after a long time after, is that what I think what does so well for me is to express my personality and to write the way that I talk. And in that way, number one, I found my voice. Number two, I found it really easier to engage with my audience.
Right.
And people know what they get. When they read a post by Andy Foote, and they're looking for very, very succinct, going to make a powerful point. It's about LinkedIn. Hey, guess what? My entire audience is on LinkedIn. Everything that I write about LinkedIn should, in theory, be relevant. So that's a low barrier for me. And also, there's a bit of snark, right? I'm fiercely independent. I'm an independent thinker. I'm not allied or aligned with the LinkedIn platform, though I love it, and I get to express myself freely. So if I think they do some stupid shit, then I'm going to call them out on it, and that has not made me a friend of LinkedIn. And so they do me no favors. Google built my business. LinkedIn did not. So yeah, I mean, to answer Alyssa's point, you've got to express yourself. You've got to dig deep and find stuff that is not being written about by other people. It's capable of you're very capable of doing that, I'm sure. And just keep doing it. Just because I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to throw your arms up and say, yeah, this is too hard. It's all samey, and I can't find my voice, so I'm just going to give up. No, the rewards are too big for you to give up, right? LinkedIn is a giant opportunity for someone with the right brand, the right voice, and the right, the right stories, the right content.
Yeah, and I think some of the things that you're bringing up around just people, you talked about stamina earlier, that it's okay. Like nothing's going to land early, and that's okay. And it's about finding your voice. And again, like you talked, that's how I felt. For my up until 2018, I would you talked about like your content and being the right vocab. For me, it was like, look, as someone who runs a company, I thought I only had to talk about my company. And if I didn't talk about Scaled, then I was, being an egomaniac or something like, and I think it was just this kind of realization that like, look, people want to hear from people. People want to hear from an opinion. They want to hear something. They don't want to hear from a company. It's very difficult in B2B in particular for a company to really do that. And so I just looked at the data. And so I think, for the other advice that I'd give is the more thoughtful you are about who you want to engage, the higher the likelihood that the content will resonate. And what I mean by that is I think sometimes people don't really think about it. And then this gets into the profile, Andy, and I want to get your take on some of the most key elements, and I'll give mine. Is that I think step one is decide just who do you want to be? You know, like, and you don't have to, it's not 100 and 0. You don't have to go all in on this or this, you know, but I think too often the reason people don't see traction is their content's schizophrenic, right? It's like, it's here, it's all over, versus saying like, look, you know, I am passionate. Like you said, Andy, like you found that like, I like this type of, I like this type of thing. And you might bounce around a little bit, but you know, it's like, for me, it's like, it's sales, marketing, leadership, and maybe some career stuff sprinkled in. Like that's it. I'm not talking about finance. I'm not talking about other things. You know, if I feel like it's important, I'll post about it. And if people like it, they like it. If they don't, whatever. But I feel like the more intentful you are, and then that goes kind of into the profile. You know, definitely make some commentary on that, but also on your profile. Who does your profile speak to? Does your profile speak to your audience, or does it speak to you know, a non-updated resume from 2012? You know,
Yeah,
so how do you think about those things? Kind of getting serious about your audience, and then, you know, kind of what are some of the key aspects around the profile? The profile, because I feel like that's a really important part of this equation that not enough people talk about, but man, can it have an impact on your like accept rates and, you know, how well your content does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So being aligned with your company, you know, as you are with Scale, that's something to be, you know, justifiably proud of. And, you know, people, I think your audience, your tribe would fully expect you to be, you know, talking about that and, you know, talking about all the good things that have happened and for you to promote that. So I think that's perfectly fine. You'll know this too, but trying to get any kind of engagement around company pages is a nightmare, because people, well, why? Well, I think probably because people just fail to identify with a corporate persona, with an organization. And so, you know, I basically built myself a brand about, you know, I built a brand around my name and not LinkedInsites.com. People probably, you know, they probably don't know, you know, that I'm behind that, unless they're paying close attention,
Right.
unless they've followed me for years. So that, you know, that's a thing that happens. But you know, in terms of the profile, I think, you know, some of the common errors that I see, Jake, are folks not really knowing how to promote themselves in terms of their headshot. There are I mean, that's the thing with the LinkedIn, right? It gives you so many options and so many decision forks. And it's, oh, well, yeah, I like that photo, so I think I'm going to stick it on. And the problem, though, is that photo is 10 years old, and your hair color's changed, and, you know, you're 30 pounds thinner. And so when you go to meet someone, then there's a lot of double taking going on, because, and then instantly they think you're, you know, a minor fraud.
Right.
So I've done that. You know, I had a photo, a headshot on that I was thinking, wow, yeah, I quite like that. I'm in front of Big Ben.
Right.
My eyes, you know, the sun's in my eyes, so I'm squinching. That's a thing. Look up squinch. Okay. It's a photographer's kit. It's a photographer's trick. It makes you more intelligent than doe-eyed.
Ah, all right, there we go.
Yeah, squinching. So yeah, lots of decisions to be made with the headshot. Invariably, people get it wrong. They have fussy backgrounds. They have crappy lighting. You know, they got the flash bouncing off their greasy head. You know, they've got the heads chopped off, or they're in a bow tie. Why are you James Bond? So no, I just like the look. Nah, the look is ridiculous. Keep it professional.
If you're like the bow tie guy, you know those guys, you always see them at the conference. There's the bow tie guy.
Yeah, I'm talking about black tie, right? It was you know, it was a concert or something.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, don't do that. And you know, the picture with a celeb. Why? I mean, what if the other person doesn't know who the celeb is and they're trying to figure out which one is, you know, is you? So lots of mistakes, pitfalls that people fall into. The three things that are your calling card are LinkedIn, are your headshot, your name, and your headline. There's a lot you can do about that headshot. That headshot comes in 3 sizes. The smallest one is tiny. That's the one you see in comments. So it's got to be face dominant. That circle has to be face dominant, put your face in there about 70 to 80% so people can recognize you in the comment. And then your name. Well, yeah, I create, you know, I mess around, I experiment. just like I do with content, right? I try different things. You've got to just to see what things work. But with my current name has got dots in between every letter, and the reason I do that is twofold. Number one, I can immediately tell when someone is using automated software, because all they do is they pull the name with a dot. No one's going to type that.
Yeah,
so that's number one. Number two, I'm group tagged all the time, and so I will stand out in that group tag because no one else is doing what I'm doing right now. And the emphasis on the right now, because that'll change.
That's
right. I used to have flanking dots, and now everyone's doing flanking dots. So I changed that. So, I mean, that's not for everyone, right? I mean, why do that to your name? But what you could do, what is for everyone potentially, is you could capitalize your entire first and last name. Not many people doing that.
Yeah.
And the reason why, I don't know, is it groupthink? Is it some kind of convention that no one told me about? Because next time you look at TV, Jake, you'll see that all of the text on the TV is uppercase. It's all capitalized. And the one reason that perhaps people don't do it on LinkedIn is because, I don't want to shout. It's not shouting. It's announcing. You're announcing your name. And for the extra milliseconds that I get in terms of attention grabbing, I'm going to keep doing that. That makes complete sense to me.
Yeah.
So your photo you can do a lot with, your name you can experiment with. The headline is a biggie. The default just takes your current job title, which could be terribly boring. And as a copywriter, I would encourage every user on LinkedIn to use that as a slogan, not the truncated with the pipes, because that looks like, I do this, this. And I do this. Make your mind up. What is it? What can you do for the reader? And that's the best slogan achieves that for you. That's your calling card, because if you think about it, this, but wherever you are on LinkedIn, if you're active in the LinkedIn Commons, as I call it, then they always see those three elements. And those three elements need to be working together to do one thing, and that's to pull as many people over to your profile page for them to do their due diligence, their research on you, and ideally take some form of action.
And I think that's something that everyone can act on, right? And I think it's something that people know. The amount of people, I'm sure you get this all the time, Andy, right? They're like, I know. Yeah, I need to do a better job with that. Why do you think people don't? Why do you think, people know that the headshots got to be more important. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not like a no-brainer, it's like, I feel like people just neglect the profile because it's almost like too obvious.
I think sometimes there's a good enough mindset that creeps in. It's like, good enough. And to be frank, Jake, can they do any A/B testing? No. Do they know any different? No. And if for example, they tried something new, a brand new headshot, they crafted a great slogan that was memorable and impactful, and then they started to see, a 20, 30%, 40% boost in profile visits. Would they then attribute those changes?
No chance.
They may not, right? Because they're possibly not paying that close attention to, the link, the correlation and the consequences of changes you make to, I hesitate to use the word brand,
right?
Personal brand.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about that? Look, so we've got some questions. I'm going to come back to that. So Alyssa had a good follow-up, which is about the type, like being open and vulnerable. It makes me uncomfortable, but also appreciate knowing that other people are struggling. So how do you feel, how do you get people over that? Right. Because I think she's probably common. I think it's pretty common, feedback, at least that I hear, to me is like, I want to share, or I'm interested in sharing, but I also don't want to, potentially like be too vulnerable. It's my company, right? It's got my company name right there. And what if my boss doesn't know what they're doing? And now the boss is like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? So how do you combat that? Or how do you get people feeling comfortable with, being more open, whenever you're talking to execs?
Yeah. So I think that's part and parcel with being authentic. And people dig authenticity. They love honesty. They can spot dishonesty a mile away. They hate artificial. They hate any kind of gaming or feeling conned in any way. So if it's real and if it's you, then by all means, and you will have seen this yourself, Jake, but in the last 18 months or so, there's been a lot of Facebook type content on LinkedIn, which I would categorize as potentially oversharing, certainly aspirational, and certainly deeply personal. I've seen deeply personal stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
A colleague talking about losing his son to suicide, as an example, right? Something that is horrific and incredibly sad, and yet that's the kind of stuff that he wanted to share. And so these are real things that are going on in everyone's lives, and there are undoubtedly there's certainly strong empathy out there, and there's certainly an audience for it, and people that want to support, empathize, and perhaps even comment, and that's why you saw the new reaction, the cupping of the heart. That was, I think, basically because of COVID. Understand that a lot of people are going through tough times. So it's certainly a component on LinkedIn. I think it's a relatively new one.
Yeah.
Personally, it's not mine. And initially, when I started seeing that kind of stuff, I was like, "Come on, people, keep it professional." But of course, no, that's not my right to say that.
That's right.
Whatever floats your boat. There's an audience for it, and who am I to say keep it off here? It's not my platform. I
Right.
do a certain type of content. I will never share any of my personal stuff. I will refer to my family in very oblique terms, and I'm here to basically talk about what I do, and I stay in that lane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it's it. You don't have to, right? I think a lot of people feel like they don't have
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
right? That they need to do it. So another one here. Well, Brian, what's up, Brian? Brian Barron. Do we write posts to engage the largest audience, or is it better to focus on a smaller niche? So
Yeah.
when you think about
Yeah.
content production, same thing as the profile, right? How do you advise clients around this topic? Am I trying to just pander, right? Or am I trying to engage? Is it a mix? Like, what's your take?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brian. I would say that what I personally do is I am looking to always engage my tribe. And when I talk about tribe, I'm talking about the hardcore followers and connections who, whenever they see my stuff in the home feed, or they see a notification from one of their connections, that they always come and bat for me, by which commenting. So not just reacting or resharing, but commenting.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's always in the back of my mind, is how can I give maximum value to my tribe? And as I said earlier, potentially people to join my tribe are basically drawn from the entire LinkedIn ecosystem, right? Because it all, in theory, should be relevant. Mm-hmm. So that's how I do it. I'm always thinking about, all right, what haven't I written about recently? What is particularly valuable or relevant right now. And so I'm not repurposing, I'm always rewriting stuff. Some of it is obviously evergreen, and that's useful sometimes. But no, I think it's a mistake to try and get maximum impressions.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the right approach. I think you have to think about who typically turfs up for you, and in that light, you could, as a newbie author, you could do a number of different things. You could look at hashtags. You could figure out, okay, which hashtags are getting high engagement, in my field. Let me use those hashtags. Let me then look at the folks who are engaging around that hashtag content. Who are the people that are daily dropping useful, great, insightful comments? How do I get them onto my content? Do I follow them? Yes. Do I connect with them? Yes. Do I engage on their content if they're producing some? Yes. So there are ways for you to find out who the engagers are, to bring them over to your stuff. But like I said, I've been doing this for a decade, and I've only just started to get traction. That's how long it takes. And sometimes if you take some time off LinkedIn, then LinkedIn is a surly mistress. I took 3 months off, and I felt like I was starting from the beginning again. It wasn't crickets, but yeah, they kind of remember.
They got new people. There's new people,
They kind of remember that stuff.
They fill in the void. So that's it. I agree. I think the key is, look, don't do stupid things to like hurt your reach. like whether it's, posting links or reshares, etc. But also, and put put things that make it easy for people to consume. But, I feel like too many people, get too hung up on it. Like, just put out the post, see how it feels. If it feels great, then amazing. If it doesn't, so a couple other questions in here. Chris Barton has one. I think it's a good follow-up. Starting my post gets hundreds of views, but not many likes. I've noticed that if I post a certain way, those views are higher, but I don't see similar jumps in likes. What should I take from that? So what would you tell Chris? I'd
say Chris, you're focusing on the wrong stat. You need to be focusing on comments. To me, comments are king. Reactions and indeed reshares aren't even royalty. And what I mean by that is that's how I judge the success of my content. If I'm getting a decent amount of comments and I'm generating discussions about my content, and people are coalescing around my content, that they're forming my posts are forming mini pop-up groups, right? LinkedIn groups, it's around content. That's the big one for me, and I think that's what people are yearning out for, right? Because anyone can do a reaction. Anyone can leave an impression. An impression is just a scroll by, doesn't mean a thing. So, Chris, I would encourage you to do everything possible to get comments, my friend. And then when you are lucky enough to get those comments, I would be engaging like crazy. I would baby that post, certainly, after the first hour, but throughout the day. And if you're lucky, then that, all of the notifications that are generated by that engagement, that brings more engagement, more people are talking about this, this comment that you made, Chris. Also with comments can be rated. How crazy is that? So if people like your comments enough, then they give them a like. I want to wing the comments. When I'm dropping a comment, I'm going to make sure it's incredibly relevant and meaningful. I'm going to give my best shot at imparting value. And, I've had comments with 60 plus likes. It's like, yes, I won the best comment competition,
right.
Which is BS. But, if you're not competitive about some of these things, then why, what's the point? Why waste your time?
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, about you can engage on the comments. I like that about the winning the comment one. I've seen that for sure. I've definitely seen that when people will get 60, 70 on like a big post. But that's it, Chris. What I would just add, what Andy's getting at, is you got to focus on producing content that people want to engage with. And you can try to early on, I see then people ask questions, and that doesn't kind of work. We've been messing around. I saw that lately you've been posting a lot of polls. We've seen polls get pretty good engagement as well too. But it's got to be something interesting though. It's not just a poll for a poll's sake. So, all right. So we've got time for maybe like a couple more questions here. Brian Barron had a follow-up about adding personal elements to the LinkedIn profile. How do you see, what I mean? Like, how do you think about people getting, I don't know, or even sharing, like, cause again, you did talk about being quirky, right? You did talk about like, sharing some, I don't know, like, less boring stuff at times. So how do you kind of balance those two things? How do you balance the sharing of personal but not too personal in your profile in particular?
Yeah. So when you think about data and how many data points there are on us, not just as consumers but also as potential employees, you got to figure that there are thousands upon thousands of data points. For the pollsters too, for the in the electoral machine, that people are pretty much a well-known quantity. And I think taken together, then that's going to give quite an accurate picture. And so I think there's room for the quirky stuff. I think there's room for you to express your personality without overstepping any bounds. And I think recruiters would fully expect you, as an example to job seekers, would fully expect you to express your character and your personality. And I think that's cool, and it's probably a good thing to do, because they also want to understand your fit, right? Is he or she going to fit in our organization? Mm-hmm. They like, they do they blow up party balloons, right? And they're a clown for kids' parties. Yeah, we dig that. That's cool.
Yeah, like that's interesting.
Yeah, so exactly. Interesting. That's the key word, right? I think the worst thing, the worst mistake you can be nowadays as an applicant is gray, right? Or beige. You gotta stand. How is that person gonna remember you? It's what the headline should do. The headline needs to make sure that people remember you. So if they're looking for a LinkedIn trainer, a coach, then hopefully they'll remember me.
That's right.
And so that's really what it's all about: brand impact and brand memory. And I think a lot of the time that has to do with your voice and the way that you express your inner weirdness. Yeah, because we're all weird in some way or another.
Totally.
If you think about it, we are all pretty weird, and thank goodness, because what a boring world we would be living in if everyone liked the same crap, right? And LinkedIn, you've said this before, is an echo chamber. And so a lot of people are all about the positivity. And yay! How refreshing would it be to come across someone that goes, yeah, I don't think so, guys. I like tuna on my pizza.
Yeah. Or it's just like the other thing too is just like there's just a complete. Here's the thing. I think, and you probably recognize this too. It will change, right? LinkedIn is going to become what some would say more Facebooky, right? Now the key will be what are the changes will make to the algorithm. Who knows, right? Like who knows what the future will hold. But I do feel like being comfortable, to your point, sharing a little bit more of who you are, right? If you have sleeve tattoos and you're in a button-up suit and overly professional, like people will suss that out as soon as they talk to you.
Absolutely.
Like they're going to realize like, hey, no, this guy's actually cool. He's got a little bit of an edge to him, versus corporate dude, who's like this.
Absolutely.
He's supposed to act a certain way. So wrapping up, like what are like any kind of parting tips for people? Like, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you feel is like most mission critical? Or are there things that you've talked about that you feel are like, look, if you are trying to up your LinkedIn, because I think we've talked about a lot of like the really good, like foundations for, even if you're not even a foundations, I think some 2.0 and 3.0 too. Is there anything we haven't talked about or any other point that you think is important that we need to spend some time on?
Yeah, I think, but I'm particularly thinking of job seekers, and I'm particularly thinking of people that are fairly new to the platform, or perhaps it's dusty, right? They haven't touched it for a long time. They put on their, they put some stuff on there maybe 5 years ago, and then COVID hits, and then they're going, oh crap. I mean, the problem with LinkedIn is that you can't parachute into the platform and say, I'm here, help me. People will not respond to that, because guess what? They don't know you, and you haven't built up social currency. You haven't built up any social capital with them, right? They don't know you. You haven't helped them. And so what you have to do is you have to start building a network quickly. But you have to do that in an intelligent, meaningful way. So that means, you have to be getting on the radar of people who you think are going to matter to you in the job search, right? How do you do that? Well, you can find them. That's pretty easy. What happens after you find them? Well, you start browsing their profile, because guess what? If they've got premium, likely to have premium, then they'll see you. Right, so they will now be aware of you. You are on their radar. Next step is follow them, right? Because that's another strong signal that you're interested in them for whatever reason. After you follow them, then, well, guess what? Might not be too big a surprise for them to expect a connection request from you. And then the connection request has to be very succinct, to the point. Before you send the connection request, figure out which groups they belong to. You can see that in their profile.
Yeah.
Then join those groups. The first group that you get into, as soon as you join that group, you've been accepted, send it a connection request. Dear Jake, we're both a member of the Hot Air Ballooning Club on LinkedIn. When I saw your comment about the other day, you may have commented on that. He may have commented on that post. And I totally agree with you, man. I would love to connect with you and give you direct access to my network. That's important, because it's not just about take.
Always.
You are saying, hey, I've got a network too. And then, then ideally, Jake will accept that request, and then keep doing that. And then this is the way that you build up a meaningful network of people. Now, if some of those people get it, and hopefully they will, if they help you to, I don't know, maybe they're at a a target company, or maybe they know someone at a target company. If they help you and you land that role, then they can cash in that chip at some stage or another. That's the reciprocity of how networking should work, right? People get that. They help others because they know in their time of need, they also get helped. So build out your network, do it in a meaningful way. You want to make sure every connection request is accepted. Be succinct. Do your due diligence on that person. Make sure that connection request cannot be ignored, will be accepted. I think is my
I love
first
that
piece of advice. And then the second piece of advice, just quickly, is to make sure, just go through your entire profile, make sure there are no spelling mistakes, right? Put it in Word, let that do the checking for you. I see every day, I see some kind of mistake on the profile, and that's a no-no in terms of attention to detail. It's like, what does that imply? Yeah, this person is not detailed, not perhaps
especially on the profile. Yeah, especially like if you put out a post, it's got a little typo. I feel like,
right.
People, it feels even more authentic, right? Like people
Sure.
are like, oh wow, look at that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a woman on my team, Deb. When I put out a post with a grammatical error, she like cringes. But I'm like, Deb, nobody cares. Like they don't care. If anything, like it does better. Like almost all my top performing posts had like a small, like very like minute grammatical error.
Right.
I think except it's a really important part about what you said that I think a lot of people, you can't be successful on LinkedIn if you're not proactively growing your network. I think a lot of people feel like if they post and the post is that good, they'll go viral. And that's not how it works. You go look at any influencer on any other platform, they busted their ass to grow those audiences. They went in and like you said, they went into the comments and they worked at it. And I think, don't just think that there's some post that goes viral and then all of a sudden, it's like your life changes. Like that's just not, LinkedIn it makes it very difficult to do anything remotely close to what people would feel is viral, right? And just begin to your point, how they over-index certain people's contents, under-index, like there's a whole bunch of details. So I think if you're focused on, like you said, stamina, the consistency, you've got to engage. And then, again, I'm a fan of the worst thing you can do is send a copy and paste, connection request. Like either send nothing or go hyper customize. Like the worst is there's synergies in our industry. Like you got to know everybody's doing that. So anyway, well, look, Andy, where should people find you? What should people, again, if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way? Obviously, LinkedIn. I think, Shelby, we dropped I think we dropped the link in there. We'll drop it in a little bit more. But where else should people find you? Is LinkedIn the best?
Yeah, LinkedIn is still the best. And then my website, www.linkedinsights.com, is the other place where I share 90% of my learning for free.
Drop it in here. LINKED insights.com.
Yep. LINKEDINSIGHTS. There we go. Thanks.
All right. I'll drop it in there. So make sure, go check out the website. Go follow Andy. Andy drops a lot of, Andy, what I like about your content is one, like you drop some high level stuff, but you also like, even on this conversation, right? Very tactical. And I think that's it. Like a lot of people, they're just looking for the tactics, and it could be like, hopefully maybe it was this talk that got them feeling comfortable. Like, okay, well, the way these guys described it, I can maybe get a little more into it. So again, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Andy, thank you so much. I appreciate it, man. It was good to meet and good to chat about LinkedIn. And I think, I started this and I'll end it the saying that personal brand is important. And I think that a way for a lot of people to look at it is think about it as your reputation. That's really all. And I don't know, Andy, if you agree with that or not, but like, I feel like that it's just looking at it through that lens. It's just your reputation. You have a personal brand, you have a reputation, whether you want one or not. It's just, are you going to do anything about it? Yeah,
absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And, I listened to your chat with Dennis Yu, and you guys both agreed that, the time of hyper popular viral content on LinkedIn is probably gone. That's gone. And ergo, so is the ability of building huge audiences. And so, I think to the little guy, you should rejoice, because now LinkedIn is doing more for you. And secondly, the barrier is very low, because a lot of people are not doing this, number one, and number two, not doing it very well. So everything everything to gun, everything to win for. Go for it.
Love it. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your week. Andy, thank you again. I really appreciate it. Make sure to follow Andy. Go check out his website if you want to get serious about your LinkedIn game. Have a great rest of your week, everybody.